Griffin Conine makes his Marlins debut. It was a pinch hit appearance, just one plate appearance, 1K, unfortunately, in a big spot in the ninth inning. The Marlins can't come back against the Rockies. They lose game one. In reality, that is not the worst result. Edward Cabrera, I want to talk about him specifically. When are the Marlins going to move him to the bullpen? He could be an unreal reliever or closer. Tons to get into on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome to Locked On Marlins. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Reminder, there's a YouTube channel as well. Hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm delighted to welcome back to the show. It's Tuesday's episode, and he is looking flames, by the way. If you aren't watching right now, hit pause on the podcast version. Go and fire up YouTube and go and see Chase, the Loud Marlins fan / the Loud Miami fan, is looking unreal in pinstripe teal. How we doing, brother?
We're doing wonderful, Pete. New school with the old school, bringing in the Conine flavor of the week. It is football season, Peter. I know you don't celebrate that out there, but Marlins are heating up in a way, bringing these players up, and we're going to college football this weekend and then regular football in 2 weeks. So I am in joy right now, happiness, and I've never been more exhilarated for a team that's like almost 40 games under 500.
40 games under 500 is kind of unreal when you say that out loud. I don't think I even realized it was that bad, but obviously they had a bit of a bad streak last week. So I'm with you. It's on the rundown for those watching again, like the many-faced god item on this rundown. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, you know what that reference means. But what it truly means is the Marlins have a new franchise record in the set 62. 62. And we've still got a month to go. 62 players have represented the Marlins this season alone. Chase, let's just start there, actually. Just the amount of roster churn and activity has been unreal. It's a historical season for the Marlins. There's people out there, like I looked at the image that Fish on First created. Probably Eli was on that one, but I looked at there's at least half of them that I can't even recognize, and I cover this team daily. It's been crazy, hasn't it?
It's really remarkable this season. It's a season that we hopefully will never have again and have never had before. I think back to 1998. It's the only time that are in the season roster turnaround was like this, because if you weren't a fan back then, but I was young, 11 or 12, I remember they traded 4 or 5 guys over to the Dodgers in April. So right away you had a big turnaround. But, oh boy, you look at those 62 people that have worn this uniform. It has almost cost me a divorce with the amount of money that I've spent on autographed baseball cards this season.
I didn't think about that.
Every time they get someone off a DFA, I'm going on eBay. I'm purchasing some cards for my card lineup. 3 days later, they're gone. I can't sell a darn card back. It's been a rough season. We'll just say that.
I hadn't thought about that kind of type of scenario, because I know you're heavily into your cards and card collecting. It's not my vibe, but that makes total sense. And the chaos that must ensue around that. When you reflect, though, Chase, let's kind of, we look back in a few years' time, or even in this offseason, I don't know. Who's going to be like the no-name reliever, for example, that stands out to you? There was the bullpen as we knew it, headed into the year. A few of them were new, actually, as well, but they kind of, stood out. But, there's been a lot of churn. There's been tons of guys. Is there any name that you're going to particularly remember and go, oh, yeah, I remember him. He pitched one game for the Marlins, and that was it, and he was maybe good or bad? I don't know, but any names specifically stand out?
None stand out. None have outperformed. You will remember the Declan Cronin. He's probably outshined himself of where they thought he would be. But all in all, there's guys that I look at. That's the one thing I can't point out is the relievers' faces on that sheet of 62 men. I could pretty much name every hitter that's on there. Again, I bought their cards, but as far as the relievers are concerned, it's going to be very difficult. And not one stood out to remain on the team. Maybe Tanoku or Tanaka, whatever the dude's name is, that's still on the team. He would probably be the mainstay of that group.
There's been a lot. And yeah, I'm the same as you. Like it's hard to kind of keep track. It's hard to remember. I mean, I know he started games, but for me, probably the name that will stand out really will be Vente Beozo. Like that's going to be a name that I'll remember for many years. I don't know what the future holds for Beozo, and I mean, we're going to be tested in cause in the next days. So
I was at Saturday's game. Dude got rocked by the Cubs. I hope that doesn't happen, and setting him up in cores it can. But maybe he'll calm back down. He was throwing beach balls in the middle of the plate. Everything was in the middle of the plate. It was rough.
He's always had some sort of like Jordan Yamamoto vibes to him in general. And Yamamoto started equally impressively. And then like obviously the wheels like fully like fell off. I mean, if you recall, there was a start in that 2020 season when the Marlins were like in the hunt, obviously. And it was in Toronto on the road. The Blue Jays were playing in that AAA ballpark that was really small because they weren't allowed kind of back and forth in Canada or whatever it might be. The crazy 2020 campaign. But I remember Yamamoto making a start there, and it was like 3 innings of 14 runs or something. Like the Marlins had run out of arms, and they just said to Yamamoto, like Donnie was just like, "Unfortunately, buddy, you just got to keep rolling here, and we're just going to wave the white flag on this one." But
he gives me Urania vibes. Jose
Urania vibes, yeah. He does in celebrations. He's like fully, he's in the game. Like, and I love seeing that. Like he lives and breathes it. And like Urania did, like a full bulldog. That's how I always describe Urania, like so much tenacity. Beozo's got the same. But I'll always remember his name. I don't know what the major league career looks like in the future for Beozo, but I'll always remember him, no doubt about it. And I'll always remember Declan Cronin, but he's been a big part of this year, though.
And you can name it Beozo the Clown. That's kind of how I'm like Bozo the Clown, Beozo the Clown. That's kind of how I'm
makes sense. Makes sense. Anything we can do for like name association in this campaign makes tons of sense. Like again, for Declan Cronin, all I see is that, Steamin' Willie Beeman thing of Steamin' Willie Beeman and whatever. And all I think is like Declan Cronin got the ladies moaning. That's all I can think of and all I see in my head. But anyway, won't carry on the singing. This wasn't on the full docket. Somehow we've gone 8 minutes on the many-faced god. To your point, there's been a lot of roster churn. It's been a pretty wild campaign, but we'll see. Go on, mate.
Including Tristan Gray, who was picked up by the A's, no longer a Marlin. I'll remember him from anatomy. We never got to see how much surgery he could have really done.
Yeah, I mean, Tristan Gray, I was reflecting back on this, after I recorded yesterday's show and was looking ahead actually to maybe the rosters expanding in September, which is very soon. And thinking about Tristan Gray, how much I was high on him in spring. Like Tristan Gray was my guy in spring. I was thinking, because he started hot, didn't he? And
knocking homers out.
He was. It feels a bit strange that in the season we've had, that Tristan Gray's effectively just been lumped at AAA. And then the A's have picked him up. He's got minor league options. They've optioned him. And so, he's a former Ray. Hit over 30 home runs, I think, 2 years in a row in the Rays system. Hasn't been quite as good as that in the Marlins system. But nevertheless, felt a bit strange that Tristan Gray didn't really get a little bit of more of a look this year in particular when, everyone's getting a look. Like, even, the list goes on, obviously. But are you surprised that Gray didn't get more of a look here?
I'm surprised, with all the churn in the system that they've done, that he didn't. He was a guy who was brought in, signed early, one of the early free agent spring training signings for the minor leagues for Peter Bendix. He was a Bendix guy coming from Tampa. Yeah. You expected him to get a shot, but when they called him up, he just struck out too much. And I don't think he got a homer in the majors in his short stints up here, if I don't remember correctly. I don't think he hit. he hit a home run? Maybe one.
I don't think so. I don't think with the Marlins. I think he has with the Rays, but not with the Marlins. I'll have to double check that after the ads. But yeah, my sense is no.
And that just shows how tough it is. You know, you're hitting monster bombs out of AAA ballparks against AAA pitching, but when you get to the majors, it's that difficult. And one guy last night, you know, got his first opportunity. We'll discuss that today, I hope. And, you know, we're excited about that.
We're going to talk about that next. I'm going to hit the ads, and then when we come back, let's talk about Griffin Conine. I want to talk about Jeff Conine. I want to get your sense, mate. I mean, listen, you're the perfect guy for this conversation. Before we do that, firstly, let's let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. And you've heard us talk loads about FanDuel. Of course, it's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, we have something a little bit different for you. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins with me, Peter Pratt, and the loud Marlins fan. Chase is in the house, of course. Chase, let's talk Griffin Conine. And there's a lot of emotion, is how I would describe it. You know, Jeff Conine in and around, you know, the dugout, in and around, you know, BP. We saw loads of clips around that. You know, finally Griff makes it all the way up. It's been a long journey for him. I think the one thing that stands out to me around everyone that's talked about the situation is his work ethic. He has been nonstop. This has been his desire, his dream, and he finally makes it up. He gets one plate appearance in yesterday's game. He'll have more opportunities in this series and for the rest, maybe at least 10 days. We'll see how long this lasts. But, you know, he gets up, big spot, unfortunately strikes out, check swing, strike out. Always the most frustrating strikeouts, in my opinion, those check swingers, like margin call from the umpire. But nevertheless, though, mate, you know, for a guy that's followed the organization from inception, just try and summarize the feelings you have of Griffin Conine appearing for the Marlins.
It's a whirlwind to really have this young kid, not so young anymore, but early 20s kid who really grew up in this franchise. If you think back, I think it was Marlins historian who
Have we lost Chase? That might be his final nugget, Marlins historian, and then the plug is pulled. I don't know if that's the Wi-Fi or not, but we'll wait to see if Chase can rejoin. I'll continue the conversation, though, on Conine. We'll briefly on that one. I must say it stood out to me with him yesterday that, yeah, Jeff Conine was in and around. Also, the Locked On Marlins OG GOAT, Aram Layden, was in attendance, and it wasn't just in attendance for Aram Layden. It was in the family section. So love to see that for Aram. I know him and Griff have been big pals. So it was great that Aram could make it out as well for his debut. Sat basically like 2 seats down from Jeff Conine. So, you know, that was great to see. No doubt about it. Chase looks like his Wi-Fi is ended, but we're going to carry on the show here. If he hops back in, we'll carry it on. But nevertheless, I'm interested to see how and what opportunity Conine gets in the next week and a bit, really, with the Marlins and beyond. One thing that's on my mind is the roster expansion is nearing, and frankly, looking at the 40-man options available, there's not a ton of guys on there that you think, okay, you know, we should send Conine back down so we can have a look at this guy. So, you know, we'll see. Looks like Chase has made it back in. Chase, are you here? Are you with us?
Well, the day of things blanking out. Yes, I'm here. So if I may, don't know where you went with that,
Please.
But it is a whirlwind being a fan. And it was Marlins historian, I believe, that posted a video that it was before Griffin was even born, that when his mom was pregnant with him, they were talking in 1997. Jeff Conine was up to bat, and they were speaking about how his wife's pregnant. They've already had a daughter, And this kid was built to play baseball in South Florida. The Marlins tried to get him in 2015. They drafted him. He elected instead to go to play at Duke. He was then drafted again by the Toronto Blue Jays in 2018. And the Marlins traded for him, as you said, in 2020 to get him back into the organization and into this franchise. And if you remember, that was Jeter days. Jeter had fired Conine and everybody else. He didn't want the legacy members who were part of this franchise to still be in that front office. Of course, Conine being brought back by Sherman, now a special counsel to Sherman as far as the team's concerned. But overall, man, you think about that story, and that is a story of how and it's the most important player in franchise history. It is Mr. Marlin's son. There's no other place, no other franchise that should have had Griffin Conine at least make his first major league at bat in. And it's just super exciting from a fan standpoint. Win, lose, draw, strikeout, walk, or home run. It's going to be exciting through September, and hopefully this kid performs.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's going to be rooting for him, clearly. In a year that we've already spoken about it, 62 guys representing the Marlins. Griffin Conine, frankly, has had more buzz than any of them that have been promoted thus far, in my opinion. Like, I can't recall any others. And so, there's a lot of history. There's a big story. There's a lot, that goes into this. That's why I'm interested to see how sensitively the Marlins approach that, considering they didn't protect him in the Rule 5 draft. We'll wait and see. But I asked Sean yesterday, I just said, Sean, listen, could you foresee a situation here where maybe the Marlins want to get a look at Agustin Ramirez, maybe they want to get a look at De Los Santos, and maybe through that there's a need to make some roster moves where actually Griffin Conine comes up now. Maybe he's on the roster for 10 days. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully he rakes. Everyone's hoping he does. But could it be a situation where mid-September, early September, actually Griffin Conine DFA'd by the Marlins? Can you see that eventuality?
You could. You hope it doesn't happen. You hope they make other moves so they don't have to. I mean, look, does Hill belong in Miami right now? Maybe. He hasn't really outperformed himself. This Hensley guy in right field who you and I couldn't name when he was out there. I think we both thought he was a relief pitcher playing left or right field. Look, the outfield should be
so true.
Jesus Sanchez. It should be Kyle Stowers. It's going to be Dane Myers. We can't forget about him towards the end of September coming back. And Griffin Conine should be up here, and they need to make sure he is up here, either with the extra spot or whatnot. Do not DFA him. Keep him up. If you want fans to come to the ballpark, think about this. David Sampson has not visited Lone Depot Park for a Marlins game since the team was sold. He's considering coming to watch this kid. If you could get David Sampson to come to the ballpark, imagine all the other fans that will come and see Griffin Conine just for that story to say, hey, I saw Jeff Conine's kid play at our ballpark on our team.
Great shout, by the way, Chase. I did see that news pop up on Twitter or X. David Sampson, effectively, it sounds like he's going to make his way to the ballpark probably, for the first time since, 2017? Is that right? And it's going to be at home against the Nationals. And so, by that time, Xavier Edwards still won't be eligible to come off the IL. And so, one would assume that Griffin should still be on the roster by that point at the very least. And so let's see how it goes. I'm with you on Hensley in particular, man, oh man, I think the Marlins need to do the right thing and just let Griffin ride it out the rest of the campaign. I don't need to see any Hensley, and I frankly don't even know his first name. That's how bad it is.
I think it's David, maybe.
I think it is David.
I'm book for it, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Soon enough that check the Loud Miami Fan account, and you'll no doubt see a couple of David Hensley cards on sale very, very soon. In my opinion, he did have his first Marlins home run, so. Listen, I know there's a lot of Hensley slander. It's only tongue-in-cheek, to be honest with you. Right. But, considering the year it's been, and where we're up to, it feels like the Marlins fan base needs a feel-good story. And I think Griffin Conine in reality kind of is that feel-good story at this point. There's only so many relievers you can get excited about and how many waiver claims.
Between him and Connor Norby, mic drop.
No
that
doubt.
is a good story going into the end of the season. You get to watch a young kid who spent his life in this franchise, and you get to see Connor Norby, mic drop, who is hitting every time he has played in a Marlins uniform. He has hit the ball. Actually, if you go back to the Orioles series, I know I'm switching quick subjects here, but Connor Norby has an 8-game streak while playing either against or for the Miami Marlins.
Great shout, mate. I mean, we should probably hit the ad now, but I do want to carry on this conversation around Norby because, Isaac Azut is definitely up there. But I think, considering what I saw of your activity on X, over the weekends, I think you might be the biggest fan of Connor Norby at this point. He's definitely caught your eye, it seems. So you're all in on this Connor Norby hype train.
I was in before he was a Marlin. Remember, I'm an Orioles fan second.
True.
Pre-Marlins, I bled orange and black. I don't know what I bled back then. I could barely walk. But anyway, no, but, I follow the Orioles. If you look at their minor league system, Connor Norby would have been up. He was just blockaded by Jackson Holliday. He was blockaded by their third baseman, even though he's just moved to third. Regardless, this kid is good, and he was highly touted. And Arm's the GOAT. We'll never say anything bad about Arm Layton, but I think he had it wrong here because Connor Norby is performing like I expected him to, maybe even better than I expected him to. I expected another couple more bombs, and even more important, he's brought out something in Kyle Stowers that we didn't see for the first 2 weeks, and that's excitement, energy, and the two of them in tandem together, they're kind of raking right now.
They are. I think you've made a great point. That definitely. I mean, Stowers couldn't have been any worse because it was a putrid start for his Marlins career. But Connor Norby calls it out. Hey, I'm up now. You're probably going to start raking, and lo and behold, Stowers has definitely taken it up a few notches. Norby's hit the ground running. He's all business. I spoke on yesterday's show with Sean Barrett. That what really stood out to me over the weekend was the fact that Norby hit his first Marlins. For the Marlins, anyway, his first home run for the Marlins over the weekend. There was no pimp jobs. There was no nothing. He just trotted around and just, high-fived everyone and sat down on the iPad. And he looks very determined as a character. He looks no nonsense. And I think that's interesting. Sean definitely pulled a few red flags. Like the walk rate is less than 2%. The strikeout rate is high. There's a few of the kind of indicators, but there's some home runs. He's playing okay at third base. So listen, there's a lot to like thus far for Connor Norby, I think.
Could he be the first Marlin to get that extension that we wanted for Luis Arraez? It has to, on my radar right now, it has to be him or X Edwards. They both are way above the rest of the talent, and they're young and they're cheap. And you know what? Maybe those could be one of the two or both of them, and that could be a good center fold to place with this franchise moving forward. And then you got a guy like Jake Berger, who I love as well. Put those three together. Woo! Mic drop.
It's a great question, by the way, on the extension piece. I have to be honest that I don't see the Marlins extending anyone in the next 5 years. Ever maybe a stretch, but maybe like one of the super young pitchers, if they fall in love with Thomas White, maybe. I think that's the profile. Pre-major league debut, you do something. But I think as soon as they get to the big leagues and they start to show that they can do something, you lose. We saw with Yuri Perez. I think it was pretty clear what Yuri Perez was going to be. And the Marlins I think they toyed with that idea, but they didn't go down. They didn't fully commit to it. And then, once they come up to the big leagues and they show what they can do, you're a bit like, I'm just going to, just go through the process, right? You've got to really believe in them, I think, pre-debut, which has kind of been the trend, which is an interesting one. Thomas White, I think, maybe fits the profile, seemingly, of all these prospects. But I think Xavier Edwards, mate, Connor Norby less. Xavier Edwards, I would say, for me, looks a class above Connor Norby, in my opinion. And I think that's a really great question to ask is, should you try to extend Xavier Edwards at this point? Like, is that skill set at this point going to diminish? I don't think so. I think that could be a really interesting proposition. And you add him in and you build around. But with Xavier Edwards, not to labor on the extension piece, but me and Sean spoke about it yesterday as well. It feels like his best position is second base. Like, I feel like Xavier Edwards long-term is second baseman. And I think that's a bit of a challenge for the Marlins because I think Connor Norby's the same. And maybe Jared Cerner is the same. And they've got this, they had this issue where they had millions of fringy shortstops, and now they've got quite a few pretty decent second basemen. So I'm really interested to see how they play this out. But, right, if I put it to you, who's the most likely to get extended? 4 guys, 4 names. Berger, he's getting closer to arbitration, by the way, but looks interesting as a player. Berger, Connor Norby, who's your guy, Xavier Edwards, who has definitely been the Marlins' best player, or Thomas White. Which of those 4 get an extension first, if ever?
I'm going with the guys who play every day. So it's going to be one of the 3, not the pitcher. And I say that because pitchers get injured. And you've seen it this year, unfortunately, with the Marlins. Let's say they did extend Yuri. They gave him all that money. I mean, this year he's already would have missed 1 year of that contract with injury. So I'm not for extending pitchers. Maybe I'm wrong here. Did Paul Skeens get extended before making his major league debut by the Pirates? I'm not sure there. I didn't hear about it, but you hear that the Bobby Witt Juniors do, right? So you extend the guys who play every day. And if you look at the way pitchers go, look at Corbin Burns on the Orioles, was traded from a playoff team in Milwaukee, who's still a playoff team. And now he's going to go into a contract year. The Marlins extended Sandy. They've done something they never did before. It's semi-worked out. He won the Cy Young. But he's injured now. So this was his last cheap year. Now, they're not trading him. I was wrong. I'll admit when I'm wrong. I'm happy they're not trading him. At least we'll get to see him at the start of next season, at very least. In a Marlins uniform and pitch in a Marlins uniform again. But I'm going Connor Norby, and I'm going X, and maybe both. And Berger, I would love them to extend Berger, as I said. I doubt that they will because that player profile doesn't mature and that as you get older, right? He'll lose his speed. Maybe he'll still be hitting bombs, and then he's just a DH at that point. But you look at Xavier, the complaint about Luis Arraez that some had, not me, some, not you, some had, is that he was a one-tool player. All he did was hit singles. Well, Xavier Edwards steals bases. He runs infield hits out, ground balls out, he gets the ground ball hits. He runs them out. He doesn't get out. So he's a good player that I would extend to. And, he's young. They're both young. So you want them when they're young, like this.
I got to be honest with you, Chase. I haven't heard one person, and I say heard, I include, the written media, let's say, in the written form on Twitter. I haven't heard one person say or tweet about an Xavier Edwards extension. You're the first person I've ever heard say that. And it's a great question, and it's a great point that you've raised. So I appreciate you bringing that to life. For the listeners, for those that are listening and watching on YouTube, let me know your thoughts. Would you extend Xavier Edwards? What could that look like? Let me know, because I haven't thought about that, but I think it's a great point. Let's hit the final ad, and then there's a few rapid fire topics for us to get into. Before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at SupplyHouse, and you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trade, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, h-vac, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every single time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Final segment here on today's Locked On Marlins, and thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's me, Peter Pratt, and of course, Chase, the loud Marlins fan, joining me and has raised the question. Great one. Should the Marlins extend Xavier Edwards? No one's asked that question thus far. Let me know your thoughts. Considering the production and the performance, it'd be crazy not to. Crazy not to. Chase, I wanted to briefly touch on Eddie Cabrera from yesterday and stereotypical Edward Cabrera. Amazing first time through the lineup. And then the wheels always fall off with Eddie Cabrera. He ends up going just over 5 innings, couple of walks, couple of Ks, usual thing with Eddie Cabrera. When are the Marlins going to move him to the pen? And never? Do you never think?
No. I was going to say next season. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Next season. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, maybe that is the time. At the moment, they've obviously got an issue with arms in that they've just run out of arms and starters. And so at the moment, okay, it might be, but that's kind of where I'm going and thinking about this is headed into next season with an off season of work. When we walk into spring training day one, are we going to see Eddie Cabrera working as a reliever, do you think, for the Marlins next year?
He will be a reliever. I don't know if it's going to be day one because they still need to get at least until June or July before the pitching staff is fully healthy as we know it. That's if Sandy's back, Luzardo's back, Weathers is back, Brax is back, Meyer is back. You know what? Those are 5 pitchers. He's starting day one in spring. It's either him or Meyer. One of them is going to be moved down, and you hope it's not Meyer. He's still young. He has time to build that third pitch. I think that's what his issue is the third pitch and not being able to fool. But back to Eddie, he's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He's great.
No doubt.
He's wonderful in his first time through the lineup, maybe sometimes the second time. But by that third time, he's given up walks. And once those walks come, you see his demeanor change. It's not, I could get out of this. It's not Sandy who goes, all right, I'm going to attack you, and I'm going to make you hit that ground ball or that pop out. It's this guy, unfortunately, you see it in his face where his mood, it's all in the face. It changes. And then he starts giving up the walks and the hits and the runs. I don't think it was a home run that got him yesterday. I think it was just a bunch of hit after hit after hit. But that's just him. He'll two or three starts ago he had that great 7-inning start. Finally had his what do they call those starts? The
quality starts.
Quality starts. He had his quality start. But then after that he comes right back to normal. And I'm sorry, but it's 4 or 5 years now. The guy's not going to change his stripes, which isn't a bad thing. Not everybody's built to be a starter. Relievers get paid too, and they get paid a lot. Look at Robertson, who signed $13 million to go to Texas after that horrible time with the Marlins at the end of last season. You look at Tanner Scott. He's going to get paid as a closer. I'm not so sure I want Eddie as a closer. Not saying he can't, but I'd like to get 1 or 2 innings out of him if needed. Maybe more of a long guy.
I mean, let's think back to what Tanner Scott was when the Marlins acquired him, and the challenges was the walks. That is his kryptonite, but the stats don't lie. He is so good through the lineup the first time. Second time it gets worse, and third time it's even worse. And so it's just progressively more difficult for Eddie to get outs, and the loud contact comes, the walks come, whatever it might be. And so I honestly look at Eddie and think, because the Marlins have, they've had to move on from some leverage arms. It sounds like the pitching staff, the rotation could be, a degree of what it was previously. And I do think Eddie Cabrera is kind of like, considering he's not trusted at this point, he could be on the outside looking in. And to me, it makes a ton of sense to try him. We'll see. It may be that he's moved. And I do think it's interesting, like Skip Schumacher, I know I want to talk about that briefly as well now in a sec, but let's assume Skip is gone, and that is the assumption. The way Skip has spoken about Eddie Cabrera, like it's kind of comical at this point because it's like, broken record Skip, I feel like he's frustrated with Eddie. Eddie's been in this organization for so long. I think he's reached his peak. And, the thing is with the Marlins is they normally improve pitchers. And, I think this is maybe the best version of Eddie as a starter. The question is this the best version of Eddie as a reliever? I think we need to answer that question. I think considering the Marlins have got, they've got a 6th inning, 7th inning, 8th inning, and 9th inning guy to find, I think Eddie Cabrera could absolutely, fill one of them roles next year.
And this conversation is nothing new. It is a broken record. It's the same conversation we were having as a playoff team last year, where you're in the playoffs. Luzardo's your number 1. Braxton Garrett's your number 2. What if we went to game 3 versus the Phillies? We didn't have a starter. It would have had to be by default, Eddie.
Yeah, agreed.
But,
agreed. It's been the same conversation. It was right. We had the same conversation about this time of the year. And I can remember like Fish on First Spaces, Alex Carver going in heavy on Eddie Cabrera going, this is a reliever profile all day long. That's all I could think about. We're running 5 minutes late. So one final one. And it's regarding Skip Schumacher, just mentioned him briefly then. We know the situation in that he's a free agent at the end of this year. Who knows what the future may hold? A lot of Marlins. I don't know any Marlins fan that is excited about Skip leaving, I would say. But, Peter Bendix, they all like their new guys, their own guys, et cetera, et cetera. Craig Mish, though, on Twitter yesterday, replying to someone talking about Skip Schumacher and, hey, you might come back and, what could 25 look like? Because the offense could be fun, the pitching back. Craig Mish, paraphrasing here a touch, said, Skip's gone. And for me, I think that is a really, if Craig is speaking about that openly on Twitter at this point, then that is the situation. And a few of us will be dreaming on him staying, but I think it's pretty clear that the Skip Schumacher era with Miami is going to end at the end of this season. How disappointed are you going to be that Skip does, move on eventually to someone? And where he lands, we don't know, but seems like this will be the end of the road for Skip Schumacher.
I've had my ups and downs with Skip off the record.
This is true.
Come a 360 way back. We're a 180 way back. Skip Schumacher is a great guy. If you look at the difference most recently between him and Don Mattingly, when the team wasn't playing well, Don Mattingly openly attacked the team in ways. Oh, if the big bats don't play, we're not going to do well. Throwing players under the bus, right? Skip Schumacher takes it on the chin for his players. And most recently, I'm just going to throw this out, most recently with Jesus Sanchez, when Jesus Sanchez got that weird out, he said, it's my fault. If the player doesn't know, that's on me. If my coaches don't know, that's on me. That's what I'm going to miss most about Skip, is the way he honorably owns the manager position, putting his team before himself. And that's really hard to find because there's egos involved here. And he has an ego. He rightfully so was a great baseball player, deserving of all the championships he won. And he was one of the youngest hired in this age, one of the youngest hired managers. And he was never going to stay in Miami for a longer period of 3 years. You would have liked to get that extra year. But he deservedly should be on a team that's competitive. Not saying this team can't be, right? But a team that he could walk into that's ready to win, that he makes that much better to get them over the hump. And there's some teams out west. You're going to see St. Louis. If he's not I'm going to throw all my wagers on him going to St. Louis if they don't make the playoffs. Not saying, look, the Milwaukee just walked away from Craig Counsell, who made the playoffs after playoffs. He just couldn't get the big one. But and although St. Louis loves their current manager, Skip Schumacher fits in that franchise, and we'll still see him in Jupiter, which will stink. But I have nothing, and I don't think, as you said, any Marlins fan or any baseball fan should have anything negative to say about Skip. Has he made mistakes? Yes, but he's owned up to them. And that's not something I can say about any other manager or every other manager rather. And I'm going to miss him dearly. I'm going to miss him talking with him. I'm going to miss seeing him in our dugout, and I'm going to miss what he brings out of our players. Because look, the team could be as bad as the White Sox, right? Really, the White Sox win a game every 3 weeks, give or take. They've given up. Everything's given up from their fan base. The Marlins are almost 40 games, if not 40 games, or somewhere around there under 500. Mm-hmm. But the way they're playing every game competitively, for the most part, even with our bullpen's garbage right now, but that's not on Skip, right? Yeah. The way the team fights for him and plays together, no matter who's in and out of that lineup, with all these names that we can't remember or some we can't pronounce, he's done a great job. And again, this is a long rant. Skip, if you're watching, please come back for me. Thank you.
Just as a side note, Skip Schumacher, I know for certain, listens to every single episode. And so he will be hearing this, no doubt about it. And I echo that. But Skip, if indeed we are, please fact check me, Skip. If you're listening, and you will be, please fact check me if you believe that there's a chance that you could come back. Like I said, if Craig Mish is saying that publicly on Twitter, then that is the most likely, the very likely outcome at this point. Nevertheless, I echo a lot of what Chase has shared around Skip Schumacher. He has been, in my opinion, the way the Marlins are playing, even though the season was white flagged in early April, effectively. I mean, early May probably, but like that's how long the white flag's been out. Skip's had these boys playing tough. Spoke about it so much on this podcast, and that is down to Skip. Accountability is his thing. Everyone knows, and like you said, the way he handled that Jesus Sanchez situation was top draw. We're out of time, so I'm going to call it a day there. Go on, one last one, Chase.
One last thing. Nicole Dean or Christina, I think it's Christine Dinolico. Sorry, butchering that. Just announced that Griffin Conine is starting tonight. The Miami Marlins lineup is out, so we're going to see Griffin Conine. It's let's get louder time because Griffin Conine is in the lineup, and I'll end it at that. Thank you for having me. Let's go,
mate. Thank you for that breaking news, mate. Griffin Conine getting the start this evening, so that should be great. And yeah, as expected, actually, this is kind of what I was speaking with Sean about. You get Stowers in center, so it ends up with an outfield trio of Stowers, Conine, and Jesus Sanchez. So all big lefty power sticks. Let's see what's cooking. Griffin's playing right, Stowers in center, and Jesus in left field. Other big news, I guess, relatively big news. Man, oh man, this episode is dragging on. Not dragging on, but there's a lot happening here live. Conine's on. Also, big news in AAA for those that are following the AAA team. Huge news. There's a new recruit added. Big first-round pick for the Marlins. Jacob Barrelsberry has been promoted to AAA. He's absolutely scorching in AA. Let's see what Jacob Barrels has got in AAA Jacksonville. Love to see that.
And if you look at it like this, Peter, Conine's going to have to stay in the league because Barry's playing the outfield now. So he's coming to play the outfield in AAA. Conine stays. It's either going to be Pache, Hill, or that other guy, Hensley, that we love so very much, who's going to have to leave this team.
Love it.
Or Chase, maybe more when Dane comes back. I leave you. Cheers.
Yeah, no doubt. So, I mean, again, see, Dane... We always get the dog, no doubt about it. That's a perfect sign off. Chase, thank you so much for joining me on Lock the Marlins, mate. It's been a very fun conversation, and you've asked questions that I hadn't thought of, which is exactly the point of bringing you on here, mate. No doubt, guys. Thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen. 45 minutes from Locked on Marlins. For those that did see the news, I will get into this a little bit later on in the week, but September will be my last month hosting the show. The show will go on. There will be a new host, but unfortunately not with me at the helm. I'll cover that in other episodes. I look forward to seeing you soon. Let's see what this Marlins lefty power stick trio can do. We'll see you tomorrow.